Welcome to another Island Conversation from Peaks Island Radio. I'm Chris. Today we're pleased to be joined by Liz Knowles. She'll be performing at the Winter Solstice concert as part of the Peaks Island concert series. In this conversation, Liz talks about blending Irish traditional music with holiday traditions and with creating a sound and an atmosphere for the holidays. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview and for talking to me about the upcoming Long Winter's Night concert, Winter Solstice celebration happening on the 20th at 7 o'clock at New Brackett Church. And Liz, you've been out to Peaks before, so can you start by telling folks, what the occasion was that you were able to come out to Peaks before?
Well, I've been out to Peaks a number of times, both for simple pleasure of going out to Peaks, but also to perform in a couple of different capacities. And I believe every time it was through the auspices of the hard work of Ellen Mahoney and the Peaks Island concerts out there. I came out with my trio, which is a trio called Open the Door for Three that I share with my husband, Kieran O'Hare, and our good friend, Pat Broaders. Another time I came out with a performance with Jefferson Hamer and Eamon O'Leary, a kind of duo in folk music as well, Irish and a lot of songs and things. So I really enjoyed performing for that. And so, this will be, I think, my third or fourth time out there doing a concert.
That's great. And I'm sure lots of folks on the island are aware of the type of music that you play, given, those other concerts. And I for one, went to the Open the Door for Three concert, and that was fabulous. It was really good. Can you let folks know what to expect for the upcoming show, the Winter Solstice show?
Well, this is kind of an interesting combination of things. I play traditional Irish music, as you said, and so it was kind of our hope to make a holiday-like concert to celebrate whatever holiday people are celebrating, as well as the solstice. Irish music is very interesting in terms of traditional music. There isn't a lot of dedicated Christmas music or holiday music. Where I think Irish music is a very joyous music and it's a very celebratory music, but it usually isn't pointed at one particular celebration or holiday. So it's an interesting thing to kind of marry these two things together. Having said that, I do feel that Irish music is all about joy and communing with one another, community, celebration, both looking at the things that bring us together that are maybe not particularly joyous, death and more bleak things in life, but also bringing out the humor and the joy in the other aspects of life. So I think that's our hope, is to kind of bring a bit of all of that in the program on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the description, Ellen had described it as a musical sojourn. Do you have a sort of path in your head of how you're going to take those different elements, like you said, and bring it forth? Is there going to be maybe like a story element or, discussion of some of these tunes and things as well?
I think for Kieran and myself, anytime we perform Irish music, it will inevitably be about a kind of journey because of how we learn the music. There isn't really a tune that we play that doesn't have a story attached to it, a person, a place, a time. And so, there will be very much that aspect present in the concert. What I tried to do with this program is not alone try to bring in things that I felt were holiday specific. There's a number of new compositions, some of which I wrote. I'm bringing a new composition of a friend, one of my best friends in the world is a Scottish small piper, Debbie Noose, and she wrote a tune called New Year's Day Dawn, and I wrote a piece in and around that. So there's some contemporary pieces of music that will definitely have a Scottish-Irish kind of twist to it. We are, not to give the surprise away, but we are going to feature a couple of familiar carols. I think for people will recognize them, as well as some things that are the rare occurrences of Irish melodies that have existed in the tradition that might have some relationship to this holiday period. we're also it was kind of my goal to create a more of an atmosphere musically than necessarily an actual narrative. I think one of the things I love about Christmas concerts or concerts that celebrate some kind of just celebrate a time of year or a changing of the season or something monumental. I like to feel that I'm being kind of transported a bit. And so my goal in programming this was a bit more about that idea of feeling transported through music. There's going to be a lot of different textures. This is not our typical kind of traditional music concert in that it won't just be you're hearing the sounds of traditional music, which are the fiddle and the uilleann pipes and the whistle. But I've invited a string quartet, which is 4 members of the Palaver String ensemble that is here in Portland. I've written a number of arrangements that kind of bring a classical aspect to traditional music. And then I've also invited a really good friend of mine who was a former poet laureate of Portland, Maine, Linda Aldrich, who's just this fabulous poet. And she's going to read a couple of her poems in and around the music. So there will be a lot of things to kind of create some atmosphere.
That's super. I want to hear about each of those things a little bit more in depth. Sure. But before we do, I'd love to hear, you're a songwriter in addition to a musician. Mm-hmm. What do you think about when you're trying to think about creating that atmosphere? Because I don't know what it is about this year in particular, but just sort of the regular, like turn on the radio to the 24/7 Christmas station isn't quite, building that atmosphere the way that it might have in years past. And I wonder, what do you think about and how do you try to create that when you're planning a program like this?
How do I try to create atmosphere or?
Yes. Yeah. And in particular to like bring that like sort of mood or spirit to the show.
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think it's probably the foundation of most of the composing and arranging that I do in traditional music is really, it's for me a very personal thing, bringing together both my classical background, which is a long time ago, a very strong early music background and classical background to traditional music, which is something I've been doing for the last 40 years. So for me, the atmosphere is created with using those different textures. It's almost like having 2 different characters and writing a play around them. And so I really enjoy that conversation without making it sound too trite. I really like trying to get traditional music to speak to early music and particularly early music, but some classical music textures. I love harmonies. I love arrangement textures that are things that are not necessarily always present in the most traditional of traditional Irish music. So, in Irish music, we very much are involving ourselves in the melody of a tune. If there are chords, if there are other textures around it, that's kind of an added feature. It's definitely a more modern feature. But for us, it's about the melody and it's about the journey that we've made with that melody. And that journey happens over many, many years. With who we learned it from, where the tune comes from. I mean, it's just embedded with all kinds of data that we feel, that we hope that when we play that melody, even if that data isn't readily apparent on the surface to a listener, that it just feels like it's a bit more of a deep dive than just saying, here's a melody. And so when I bring arrangement to that with string quartet, again, with these textures of bass and harmony and different kinds of articulations and different kinds of sounds around those melodies of traditional music, I think it's one of the most magical things about Irish music that these melodies actually love it. And they really kind of, I think there's a reason that in kind of modern day Irish music, we are putting more and more chords to this. We are putting more textures to this. I've just finished a number of symphony concerts where I'm doing it on a symphonic level, putting traditional music with a symphony. So it kind of loves it in a strange sort of way, even though that's not its original home, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and that's fascinating. Where did you get the idea to sort of bring that element. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, if this relates, how the Palaver Strings quartet relates to that for this particular show.
Well, I think there's certainly a historical precedence for bringing folk music into the classical world. Composers like Bartok. I mean, I think you can go back to many different composers, Mendelssohn, Wagner. A lot of these composers kind of took on folk music at different stages and in different ways, very, very different ways. So it's not a new thing. But I think that for me, again, on a personal level, it's just kind of the two things that make up my musical experience. And so it makes sense to have them kind of conversing in a compositional sort of way. In terms of using Palaver, I've had I feel like a long-standing relationship with the group, and I just love the work that they do. They are a very forward-thinking classical ensemble that does everything from classical music to contemporary music, folk music. And they love to perform in venues that are kind of non-traditional to classical music, bringing, I think, really exposing classical music and everything that they play to a new audience, maybe an audience that wasn't the kind of concert-going audience that might go see a symphony concert, but they also might be. So I love their kind of whole ethos about string playing in particular, and putting it in a very contemporary context, but also keeping it very rooted in all of the traditions that they choose to play in terms of their repertoire. So it's been really fun working with them on, even with just a string quartet version of them has been really fun over the years.
Obviously, you have a very long history of working with your husband, Kieran O'Hare. And I wonder if you could talk about how using the instruments that he plays, how you use that to sort of build into that classical piece, right? Because I think of, pipes as being more of the traditional Irish, like you were talking about. I wonder what that mix is like when you bring it sort of with a more classical angle as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. He, obviously he's my husband, but musically, he's been a huge influence on my life, and I hope he would say that conversely. But we have really enjoyed working together in multiple capacities. His instrument is particularly fascinating to me. I think one of the things I find myself saying on stage that gets a good laugh is, I always wanted to play the pipes, but I married them instead. And that's really, it is really the truth. His instrument is very interesting. The uilleann pipes are the Irish bagpipes. They are very different than the Scottish bagpipes you see in parades. They are not mouth blown. They have a bellows, which pushes air through the instrument. And the reason that that's important is it means that the reeds can be made in such a way that the instrument has a much wider range than the Scottish bagpipes. So the Scottish bagpipes have 9 notes. His have 2 octaves, and even a little bit more. So he has quite a large range. The instrument can play a melody. It can also play a drone behind it. So he's got 3 drones that play a single note. This is kind of important in terms of the music that we play, both traditionally, but also arranging for this, because that drone, there is something, and I feel at this point I could write a dissertation about this. I'll keep it short, but I feel that traditional music, Irish traditional music, is very rooted, quite literally, in that drone. But there is almost a sort of it's present even if it's not present, if that makes sense for me. Whenever I hear Irish music, I think I always relate it to having this drone. And there's something really primal about that feeling of having that drone when it's present. The other element to his instrument is that he has kind of rudimentary chords in what are called the regulators. And these are it's basically another set of chanters that he's able to play some keys and get some kind of little bits of chords. So this really affects the arrangement that you write around it, because this instrument in itself is kind of a one-man band. So if it's playing at full tilt, like if everything is being used, you have to be really careful about what you arrange and write around for it. So what I have found over the years, and it's an ongoing kind of education for me and a delight. I mean, it's one of the things I really love doing is really exploring arrangement for Irish music as a kind of challenge to fit it around the music, not change the music, not make the music have to change in order to fit it, but also reflect the music in the arrangement. You know, one of the great challenges of arranging this music is that for a symphony or for a string ensemble, a lot of times these arrangements will feel very simple. They will feel to a player that is used to playing all kinds of classical, hard, virtuosic, extravagant classical music. These arrangements will feel very simple because they are. For me, the music has a deceptively simple quality in that it's really about the rhythm. Yes, it's about the melody, but it's about kind of creating a pulse in the music. But harmonically, if you get too complicated or you do some different things with balancing rhythm and harmony, you can kind of mess that up in the music. So though the arrangements at times feel simple, it's about creating a style and a kind of language, a textural language around the music that makes it sit, that makes traditional music sit in it. It would be much like, I relate a lot of things to kind of visual imagery. It would be like painting a landscape, trying to create a landscape around something specific without taking your attention away from that thing you are trying to, kind of surround. And so it's a really interesting, and many people do this in many different ways in terms of arrangement. And I feel like my compositions are still very much a work in progress over the years, trying to, and this concert actually gave me a great opportunity to yet again kind of look at those kinds of, those bits of work around arranging.
You know, listening to you talk about this, I get the sense, A, that you're somebody that cares a lot about your composition and about songwriting, but I also get the sense that you've got a teacher's sensibility. And I think if I remember right, you actually do some teaching too, right, in terms of workshops and classes. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that and maybe how that, I don't know if this is the right term, but maybe rounds you out as a musician if you feel like it does.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think teaching is something I've done since high school, really. I mean, I think I've just always enjoyed it. When it comes to Irish music, I have particularly enjoyed teaching Irish music and various topics in and around Irish music, largely because what I had to do to transition from being that classical player to being what I hope is an established and an authentic traditional player, it required a long journey, one that I'm still on. And it kind of requires a constant sense of learning and taking in and rethinking and reevaluating what it is that you think you know about this music, and then how to play it, how to think about it, how to project it, how to talk about it. And so for me, teaching is just an extension of my own education. And I get as much out of the learning for myself through teaching it than I do when I'm just learning something on my own. So I feel it's it's almost sounds self-serving, but teaching helps me probably more than I help my students, although I really hope that I help my students. I teach a lot of workshops. They're either kind of one-off workshops largely during the summer, but throughout the whole year, depending on where it is around the world. And then I also hold an adjunct position at New England Conservatory for teaching Irish music. And I teach an ensemble there and then private students. So yeah, teaching is a huge part of my life. It's not the only part of my musical life, but it's very fulfilling and is incredibly wonderful aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. And now that I hear you talking about where you're teaching again, it reminds me that I think a lot of folks that have come through the Peaks Island concert series have been folks who've been at the New England Conservatory of Music. And I wonder if there's something about this area, Peaks maybe, but also the Portland area, that attracts folks that like this style of music, and if you see a connection there between the mindset or the mentality of somebody that might be interested in this sort of music and coming to a place where you're surrounded maybe by the ocean, by, in some sense, natural environment compared to, other parts
Yeah.
of the country.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said it. As a musician that's been on the road for the better part of my life, the older I get, but I think this happened even when I was young, if you felt you were playing in a place that wasn't your standard venue, wasn't your standard location, and it was incredibly beautiful and surrounded by things that you weren't used to seeing, like an ocean expanse or something unusual, there's nothing better. I mean, there's nothing better than feeling that you're bringing music to a place like that, and you're also being fed yourself by this wonderful surround. So Peaks Island is just it's like candy for that. I mean, come on. My husband and I, every time we go to any of the islands for whatever reason, we feel like we've gone on vacation. And you really do feel that, like even in a 15-minute ferry ride from Portland to hop over there to Peaks Island, you really feel that you've entered another world, and you haven't gone that far. And I love that about living here. I love that about Peaks Island. And, a lot of this is due to Ellen Mahoney. I have to say, Ellen and so many other people in the world of folk music, there's usually a person like Ellen that has just decided that this is really important for her community, really important for her, really important for her family. Her daughter plays music as well. And I think that when you have this person that creates an energy around an idea like that, that's also kind of well, it's just transporting, and Ellen has been a force of nature, I think, in this area for in that regard for quite some time. And I think people come for that as well. In terms of just the area, one of the reasons we moved to Maine was being in this nexus point of New England between Cape Breton, all of these styles of kind of Irish, Scottish, contra dance. I think there's a kind of magic about Maine in general, but particularly Portland in terms of the music. And I think, its proximity to New England Conservatory, Berkeley, and these places make it a really nice destination for anyone that is trying, putting on a program of music that wants to find an audience that's engaged. And there is an engaging audience here, an audience that wants to be engaged. It's one of the wonderful things as a musician to live here. It's wonderful.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I'm also so happy to hear you talk about Ellen and about how there may be other people like Ellen in different communities doing the same thing, because I feel like we're really blessed out here to have Ellen's knowledge and network of people that she knows who are just fabulous musicians and who bring such a great sort of vibrancy to our community, especially in the winter when it can get a little sort of long in the tooth and you start to wonder, like, what is there to do around here other than like walk and enjoy nature? Oh, we can go see a show.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Ellen is amazing. And I will say again, I have experienced an archetype like Ellen in so many places in this country. And for me, as a folk musician, as a musician, just in general, it is a force of nature. And it to me is the most, I don't know if it's the most American thing or the most human thing. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but it just shows you the power of one person's vision. It shows you the strength and the power in one person's energy. And she has got it and it's incredible. It's incredible to witness. And as a musician, it's incredible to be a benefactor of that energy. And that kind of decision and commitment to her community. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like that's a lovely note to end on. But if there's anything else you want folks to know who are coming out to the island, or rather who are coming out to the show on the island, please do feel free to share, or where folks can find you if they're interested in learning more.
If anybody has any questions, they can probably reach me at my website as well, lizknowles.com. But I think if they Google Peaks Island concerts, Solstice concert, they'll be able to find the. I don't think she's taking tickets in advance. I think it's at the door. I could be wrong about that as well. But they should be able to find information about it. Yeah.
Perfect. I do think you're right, and I'll make sure I drop the link in the show notes for folks too. Perfect. Well, this has been a thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Thanks for listening to this conversation from Peaks Island Radio. If you like what you heard, please go to peaksislandradio.com where you can sign up for our email list and receive all these episodes as they come out, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcast player.